uh, I had the wonderful opportunity to watch Alan's show on Gaia. So when he came out with the America Codes, I was like, wow, I can't wait to watch this. And so as I watched, the first video, what came to me as a veteran was, we took an oath, right, as veterans to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and to bear true faith and allegiance to the same. And what immediately, came to me was we really didn't know what we were taking an oath to. Because the message that Alan's going to be discussing is one of extremely powerful. And especially as you look at where we are as a country and you look at where we are as a world, this message is a message for humanity, right? And we talked earlier a little bit about, some of the discoveries that are occurring, at the Great Pyramid. And I was just compelled I emailed Alan and Wendy, and I was just like, hey, we need to get this out to veterans, right? And again, we volunteered, right? It's not like we're any special sauce or anything. We volunteered, but, we did take an oath. And so it makes it even more powerful, this oath, right? Again, I don't want to steal Alan's thunder of what he's going to present, but I plan on sending this to every single one of the veteran friends that I have, those that are still active duty, that are admirals and generals, because we are America, right? We are we're the bright shining light, and
spearhead,
right, for humanity, right? And so, I mean, what Alan's uncovered has really made me just take a look at my humanity, right? And what America stands for. And so I've got this little book here, The Founding Fathers. This quote's from John Quincy Adams, who, oh, by the way, has my birth date of July 11th, 1967. He's 200 years prior, right?
Yeah, a little bit older. Yeah.
A tad bit. But he says, I always considered the settlement of America with reverence and wonder as the opening, and I'm actually tearing up, you guys, as an opening of a grand scene and design in Providence, which is capitalized, for the illumination of the ignorant and the emancipation of the slavish part of mankind all over this earth. So we're America, and I'm tired of it, right? I did not vote. I haven't voted in the past 4 general elections, and not that I'm a seance or anything, but I saw, what I think of Stalin's, like, it doesn't matter who voted, it's who counts it, right? So what are we going to do, America, right? As we look at the current situation of the world events, right? What are we going to do? Are we going to continue to be, are we going to relight the flame of liberty? And so then I start thinking about these framers, and it's amazing to me, right? I've got it up here, and I was thinking about it last night, right? Ultimately, from the Declaration of Independence, right, we have unalienable rights, right? We have the right for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? Happiness is not guaranteed. How can it be in this third dimension, life of polarity, right? There's good and bad, there's dark, there's light, right? That's the game, as Alan will talk about, right? But it's the pursuit of it, right? And so that's what America is. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? And so when we start thinking about what our country's about, this is the message, right? And it's been encoded until it was air quote time for us to understand it. And so what Alan has done, at least for me, has reinvigorated my role as a human, right? And to understand that all men are created equal, right? All men, everybody. And you have a right to pursue happiness, right? And that happiness is living this life the best you can and pursuing that happiness in a state of liberty and freedom. And with the digital age, with the No Way Out, everything that you do, Ponch, with all the people you've had on, it's time to get back to putting the phone down and taking a step outside your house and looking at this amazing mosaic that we've been given to create with. So what Alan is going to be saying is one of the most powerful messages that can go to all humanity, right? And it's not just us about being Americans, right? It's about being human, and we're all created equal, and we have a right to pursue happiness, and happiness is attainable. And having talked with you, Ponch, for 6 months or so, I mean, Alan, we had talks last night about the pie and squaring the circle, and we've dove into how this brain is projecting the reality, right? And so what my hope is with this podcast, and Alan, thank you for allowing Ponch and I to be a part of this message. It's an extremely important and honorable aspect to be a part of this, Alan. So thank you. Is everybody chill the fuck out, right? Everybody chill the fuck out and recognize that what Ponch has on his shirt, we're all one. And it's time to act like that. So Ponch, the fact that you are allowing me to be a part of this podcast is an honor. Our work towards ending veteran suicide is how we got back together again after flying. We hadn't seen each other for 20 years. And I just wanted to take this time to really frame up what Alan's going to be showing us, because we're all Americans here, and we're all humans, and we're all one. And all of the insanity, right? We're projecting it. It's everything that's inside of us, right? So I'm not a butterfly, but I got to tell you, I'm going to call it up right now. The Thich Nhat Hanh quote. You know where I'm going with this, Ponch. I should have had it all set. Sorry, but ultimately, you know, I look at especially this generation of veterans. They've been at war for 20 straight years, 20 more, right? 24. It's got to end. Right? It needs to end. And 24 years, what's changed? Nothing, right? So if we can understand who we are, and these framers of the Constitution, sorry, I'm getting the quote up, they were brilliant. And Thich Nhat Hanh, here's the quote, right? And I'll kick it off with this. Sorry, I can't find it real quick. Because as veterans, we've seen the darkness, right? We've seen the sheer violence and ugliness. And so if we truly live in a world of polarity, which we do, right, then we can see the light. And so Thich Nhat Hanh, here's the quote. Veterans are the light at the tip of the candle. I'm sorry. Illuminating the way for the whole nation. If veterans can achieve awareness, transformation, understanding, and peace, which I have, they can share with the rest of society the realities of war. And they can teach us how to make peace with ourselves and each other, so we never have to use violence to resolve conflicts again. So, Alan, your floor, brother. Ponch, thank you. I can't thank you enough. And this podcast is going to change the world. And let's get it on. So thanks, guys.
Thank you, Bart.
Thank you, Bart.
You're welcome.
Well said. Wow.
Yeah.
That has made me make a decision about what I'm going to show you earlier than I was going to show you. I was going to show it right at the very end, and I couldn't find where was the appropriate place to put it, because I always like to think of narrative and arc and story and bringing people along on a journey. And there are certain high points, climax points where you want to go, oh, got it, got it. And then you don't want to dip down from there. So I'm going to give you an intro first, and then I'm going to actually go to the very end, show something just to kick this off, and then you can choose whether to put it in or not. To me, it's important, but finding the right place for it, I think, has just been put into perspective for me. by Bart. Thank you. So, just as an introduction as to who I am, for the last 20 plus years, I've been decoding ancient secrets concerning the biggest literary mystery of all time, the true identity of the writer known as William Shakespeare, and the true purpose of the subterfuge behind that mystery. Along the way, I've been blessed to discover and to reveal to thousands of Shakespeare fans worldwide dangerous and scandalous secrets encoded within the greatest works of Western literature. I say dangerous because they reveal truths long hidden from the public about the ultimate nature of existence, secrets that the church forbade as heresy, punishable by burning at the stake, right? Secrets that have the power to shatter. I'm going to have to cough here. I have bronchitis and it's coming up. Start again. Secrets that have the power to shatter outdated paradigms, not only in literature and academia, but in countless disciplines, including the truth about ancient civilizations, pyramids of Giza, Orthodox religions, the King James Bible, the British monarchy, basic Newtonian physics, advanced mathematics, sacred geometry, and even disclosure about extra-dimensional beings. And that's Shakespeare. I mean, if you want to get into it, just go there, see my other work. It sounds like an exaggeration, but it's not. That's what he was teaching us about. But I will say that even given the breadth of discoveries and their ramifications for us today, that Bart just elucidated so well, as for us right now today, where are we? What I'm going to show you here in the next hour or so, I consider to be among the most significant discoveries of my whole 20-year journey, because they bring the mystery out of the cloudy depths of the English Renaissance into what is quite possibly the most important crisis confronting our whole civilization right now. The myth of energy scarcity, the unworkable models of fiat currency, deadlocked politics, and the inevitable, imminent collapse of all the systems we take for granted that we know are not working, to soon be replaced by the radical disclosure that we are not alone in this universe, that the cataclysmic changes we're experiencing are intended to make us reevaluate our priorities and raise our consciousness to a new level of understanding that, despite our seemingly irreconcilable differences, we are one. So I'm excited to share with you today what very few have seen so far, as I only released most of this information a few months ago, though incredibly, it's been hiding in plain sight for almost a quarter of a millennium, encoded into the founding documents of America, the Declaration of Independence, the U.S. Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. Now, these revelations comprise what alchemists and Freemasons call the Great Work. Nothing short of the truth of who we are, how we got here, what our purpose is. So strap yourself in and get ready to pull 9Gs as we experience what will seem at first like just another ludicrously exaggerated Hollywood script. And yet, as always, turns out, truth really is stranger than fiction.
Can't wait, Alan.
Yeah, let's get airborne, man.
I'm going to go to the end. So this part you'll edit out. I'm going to go to the end to show you what Bart has sort of prompted me to show first, and then I'll go back to the beginning and do it straight through as one thing. You can choose to put it in at the beginning or the end or wherever you feel it's necessary, or take it out. But I feel it's really important to go there. Yeah, well done, Bart.
Thanks,
All right.
Alan.
You seeing this? Page 1, page 2, page 3?
Yes, 100%. Yep.
All right. This will make sense when you've seen the whole presentation, but right now what I'm showing you is Thomas Jefferson's own rough draft of the Declaration before it became the Declaration. And there's a section in it that I want to draw our attention to, because one of the problems that we face in this age of so much disinformation, so much rubbish online that you don't know what to believe and what not to believe. There's a lot of down on Freemasonry. A lot of people saying, "Oh, it's a covert cult and they're devil worshippers," and this. It's so confusing, right? If you don't know, if you haven't done the work yourself to figure out what they truly are. I'm not a Mason. I couldn't talk about it if I was, apparently, because there'd be strict secrecy clauses. But that's not because it's something that must not be shared and it's all secretly done in dark cave somewhere. It's because it's the ultimate truth that throughout the ages has had to be protected. Principles. So when we think of that, and I start talking about that, I know that one of the buzz buttons for some people is, yeah, but, come on, those Freemasons own slaves, right? Those founding fathers own slaves. What do we do about that? Are you telling me that they're wise and wonderful? And no, I'm telling you that they were very, very brilliant people who had confusing, like all of us, had problems in their own lives. But what's important to know, you were going to say something? What's important to know?
It's about context, right? And Alan, this is critically important in anything in a complex system. Is context is everything, right? Well, the
context that I'm going to give you is George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Ben Franklin, John Adams, and others owned slaves. How did that come about? They all inherited them from their fathers, and some of them from their fathers. And it was a way of life that they were born into. I think George Washington was 11 when he inherited his father's, mansions and holdings and slaves. And he married a woman who then inherited more from her father, so his father-in-law. And it's the same for all of them. And we tend to get blinded by that and just focus on how outside the norm that is, oh yeah, but they had slaves. And I want to read you what Jefferson wrote in his intended declaration, because it sheds a light that we never see this. We hear all the wonderful quotes, the usual ones that Bart just mentioned, all men are created equal. And life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. There are some wonderful, wonderful, beautiful poetic quotes in the Declaration. But a vast amount of what was here, these red parts that you see on the screen, were all taken out of his own, what he wanted the draft to be of the Declaration. And I'm going to show you just one part. Because it's known that Benjamin Franklin was an active abolitionist from when he was about late 20s onwards. George Washington did the same thing, freed the slaves that he had become, awful to say, isn't it, owner of. Jefferson, the same thing. Adams, the same thing. They all inherited that. It was a way of life, but you need to know that they wanted to do their best, but they couldn't. America would not have happened if they tried to get rid of slavery at the time, because, of course, all the southern states, the southern colonies, they were not going for it. It was not going to happen. That was their livelihood. So here's what we never hear about the Declaration. This is Thomas Jefferson's own notes on the left. He's talking about the king. He has waged cruel war against human nature itself, violating its most sacred rights of life and liberty in the persons of a distant people who never offended him, captivating and carrying them into slavery in another hemisphere or to incur miserable death in their transportation thither. This piratical warfare, the opprobrium of infidel powers, is the warfare of a, and he puts it in bold and underlined, Christian king of Great Britain, determined to keep open a market where men, capitalized and made huge in his notes there, you can see it on the left, where men should be bought and sold. He has prostituted his negative for suppressing every legislative attempt to prohibit or to restrain this execrable commerce, this assemblage of horrors. He is now exciting those very people to rise in arms among us and to purchase that liberty of which he has deprived them by murdering the people upon whom he also obtruded them, thus paying off former crimes committed against the liberties of one people with crimes which he urges them to commit against the lives of another. All that had to be taken out of the Declaration. We don't know that. We just hear, oh, yeah, well, he had, it's, and you have to understand, if you look into the lives of these people, they all, well, it wasn't abolished until finally through Lincoln, which is an amazing, wonderful story. And you should got to see Spielberg's movie, Lincoln. Daniel Day-Lewis is amazing. And it focuses on the last 4 months of Lincoln's life, where he's done what he can do up to a point, but he's got to get the 13th Amendment passed in time so that slavery is done for. And he manages it, and then a few days later, he's assassinated. So anyway, that's the section that I didn't know where to put in all of this. I'm going to go back now to...
I've never heard that before, Alan. It's I've never heard that either.
No, yeah, of course. It's excised from what we know about the actual document itself. All right, let me get back to...
And while you're doing that, while you're bringing up the slides there, I think what's important here is when I bring up the fact that context matters, right? We talk about complexity theory on this podcast. We talk about adjacent possibles, affordances. What does the environment allow you to do next? And that's where I believe Alan is going with this, is that during that time, the environment wouldn't afford our founding fathers to do what they sought to do. They knew that they had to, I hate to say this, nudge the system in a direction and get America moving towards something. Not starting with the final destination, but knowing that that's the direction of travel we're going. And we're still on that journey. And as veterans, as Americans, and as all humans, we are still on this journey. Nothing's perfect. There are a couple paths that could emerge here where one we may be on, we may not be on, and that is either we go to a greater consciousness, a greater level of humanity, or we revert back towards what was written in what Alan just shared with us, and that's what we don't want to do.
Well, it's been in that short phrase, toward a more perfect union.
Yes,
it was a start. It was the thin edge of the wedge. It was all they could do at the time, else there would never have been an America. It just would not have happened. So all of the abolitionist language was taken out. Mm-hmm. All of other language about looking after, women's rights, indigenous people. It's taken out because that's all they could manage. And they were just content with let's get started. And hopefully over time, we will get to be better people and we will understand each other better. And we will inch by inch, we will make this beautiful place what we envision it to be, a shining city on a hill.
And that's why we take an oath to the Constitution, right? I mean, that's it. That's why that's why this is bigger than ourselves. And anyway, Alan, I just want to step in there and make some connections that this is the journey we're on. It's a direction of travel, and in complex systems, which we're in, you don't start with a defined future state. You start with what's available now, and you keep moving in that direction. And that's where we're going with this. So I appreciate that.
Can do. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, thanks for listening to that. Fit that in wherever it fits.
Fits great right there.
Now, yeah, I think so. I tend to think so. All right, so I'm going to share again. Okay. Most of us are aware, of course, that many of the founding fathers were Freemasons. The internet is full of videos about Washington, D.C. being designed to incorporate Freemasonic and Hermetic symbolism into the architecture, geometric grid patterns. And although Dan Brown did a lot to get the whole world excited about secret societies, anagrams, intricate codes, believe me, even he could not have foreseen what you are about to witness. He completely missed the true story of the secret destiny of America and its messages, painstakingly hidden within the Declaration of Independence, with its mysterious, ghostly imprint of a hand in the lower left corner. Well, here it is, the sacred document created at the very birth of the new nation. Almost a third of the founders who signed the Declaration were Masons. George Washington, the most well-known Freemason of all, did not sign it. He was busy on the battlefield at the time, desperately trying to hang on against what seemed insurmountable odds. Benjamin Franklin was provincial Grand Master of Pennsylvania. Thomas Jefferson never openly admitted to being a Freemason. But as you're about to see, he was absolutely complicit in making sure Freemasonic symbolism and codes were embedded in the document that he supposedly was the primary author of. The America codes that we may not have time to show the absolute proof of this, but he turns out not to be the primary author of it. Clue, it's somebody who flew a kite. But Jefferson was a known cryptographer. After all, he even invented a cipher wheel to protect his personal correspondence. In fact, all three leading minds behind the Declaration's creation were expert cryptographers. They were in a war, after all. Secret communication was an absolute imperative. So it really should come as no surprise at all that we're dealing here with a coded document. The only questions should be, what is the message? Who were the intended recipients? And why? The man who wrote it out with quill and ink on parchment was Timothy Matlack. He was a veteran, a military officer, a politician, and a beer salesman. But his calligraphy was so perfect that whenever the Continental Congress wanted something important written up, they'd call him. And this, of course, was the gig of a lifetime. So I'm going to show you 3 clues, 3 absolute giveaways that prove this document is a code. Number 1, as you can see, is utterly beautiful penmanship. I mean, it's inconceivable how gorgeous it is, and yet he makes a terrible mistake. He spells representative with an EN taken out of the middle. And yet he adds the missing letters and announces the mistake with a little marker called a caret. And further down, another mistake, again announcing by adding the missing word only, marking it with a caret. He's obviously a master penman, so this in itself is quite extraordinary. So imagine, he takes it to Jefferson and Franklin, and what are they going to say? It's beautiful, Tim, but this is the most sacred document we're ever going to produce. It'll be on display in the rotunda of the National Archives, viewed by millions, protected by a specialized case with light filters, inert gas, humidity control. It'll be kept in a safe in a bunker, protected by bulletproof glass. It'll be a national treasure. Those mistakes you made have got to go, Tim. You'll have to do it again. And the truth is, Matlack had plenty of time to do it again. Those mistakes you made have got to go, Tim. You'll have to do it again. And the truth is, Matlack had plenty of time to do it again, because all those delegates could not be there on July 4th. It didn't get signed until August 2nd. And there's no way they'd leave two blatant mistakes spoiling the whole effect of their most sacred document unless they are not mistakes. In fact, Matlack made no attempt to hide them. Rather, he draws our attention to them by highlighting them with those caret markers. All right, second clue. I knew if this was going to be a genuine code, the precise number of characters would have to be significant in some way. 20 years of decoding the original works of Shakespeare have shown me I would have to count every letter, every piece of punctuation, every numeral, right down to the very last dot of our sacred honor. Well, it comprises 6,771 characters. Do you see the significance yet? It's a perfect mirror image of the year of its creation, 1776. This is the hallmark of a master cryptographer who understands the fundamental principles of the universe, perfect balance of opposites, which leads us to the third clue. Can 6771 characters be arranged into a perfect rectangular grid such that every line is the same length? That's called the grid length. And yes, it's another hallmark of a brilliant cryptographer, because the number 6771 inherently allows every line in the grid to be made up of 111 characters, down, all the way down to the last dot. 111. It's a reference to another fundamental metaphor of Freemasonry, the 1 in 3, the 3 in 1 of the Holy Trinity. It's fundamental to their way of thinking, and it's embedded in all their other special symbols and codes, including triple tau and things that we don't have time to go into here. Okay, just in case you need a fourth clue, Matlack drew many mysterious lines placed between certain sentences. Now, he was clearly a master calligrapher. Beauty and form was his trademark, the very reason he was chosen for the job. So why are these lines highlighted here with blue boxes not uniform in size and seemingly so arbitrarily placed? Furthermore, why do these other spaces between the remaining sentences, highlighted here with red boxes, why do they not have lines between them? Since numbers are a hallmark of the cryptography so far, obviously we should count them. Well, there are precisely 33 lines, highlighted with blue boxes, the actual lines, and 11 spaces with no lines, the red boxes. 33 to 11 ratio is once again mimics the 1 in 3, the Holy Trinity. And 33 is, of course, a not so subtle reference to the highest Grandmaster degree of Freemasonry. And what do these lines do functionally? Let's connect the two so-called mistakes with a line marking exactly where the missing en and only should be, and see if another well-known fascination of Freemasons might be at play: geometry. If so, we should expect the angle of that line, that red line, to be significant. So watch what happens if the lines were to change length. I'm going to take those out momentarily. It would diminish or extend the spaces between those sentences, and clearly the connecting line would shift quite considerably, and the angle of the connecting red line would vary according to the size of Matlack's lines and where he placed them. They are, in fact, nudging the characters into place so as to make that line be specifically the angle that it ends up being, which is precisely the side slope angle of the pyramid on the obverse side of the Great Seal of America. Now, I don't expect you to just take my word for anything, so I'm going to show you what AI has to say about these discoveries. It's ironic, actually, because I've been resisting getting into the technology for a couple of years now, but my daughter, Alana, has been using it for some time. And she said, Dad, you really should put it into GPT and see what it says.
Yeah.
So she started feeding all this data into Chat GPT. There's a lot of data, by the way. I mean, you're only seeing today, less than a tenth, less than that, 5% of what's in the actual 22 videos of the American codes. But I'm showing you some juicy stuff to get your appetite whet. So here's what it had to say at this very early stage of these findings. Only seen a few things, so it gave just what it called a qualitative conclusion. It said, the presence of multiple interlocking numerical references strongly suggests cryptographic artistry. The chance of all these specific numeric, geometric, and symbolic alignments happening accidentally is extremely low, but not conclusive enough to indicate absolute proof of intention. It's being cautious, extremely low, doesn't have enough data yet, which is encouraging because it's being honest. It's not just saying, oh, I'll tell you what you want to hear, Alan. No, because she's feeding the prompts in very judiciously and correctly, and you've got to be careful how you do that, not show confirmation bias. Well, it turns out there's not a lot of information about the design of the Great Seal of America. It was not decided on according to the historical narrative we've been given until 6 years later, 1782. And there's a mystery surrounding who designed it, when, and for what purpose. The official story does not gel with this discovery, though. And yet the design of these two so-called mistakes seems to have been to deliberately lead us to that Great Seal, and maybe to its presently unknown history and purpose. A foundational methodology of Freemasonry is the use of Pythagorean theory and geometry. So we must assess the property of that slant angle with the right angle triangle that it forms on the Great Seal's pyramid. Well, the angle of this line is precisely 67.38 degrees, which means the right triangle formed in the picture is a 12-13-5 triangle. Now, don't worry about the math. I'm going to make it simple for you. You don't have to do any. I'm just showing it to you. Let it wash over you if you're like most people and math phobic. Just flow with it and see where this is going. It's a 12-13-5 triangle. What is that? It's the only triangle that has the quality that its perimeter, as you add up all the sides, is identical to its area. Not even the famous 3-4-5 triangle has that quality. Remember the 3-4-5 triangle we all learned in school? 3 squared plus 4 squared equals 5 squared, right? Very important and a huge deal with the Freemasons. But even that triangle is not as important as this one in terms of it expressing unity, equality. Perimeter and area are equal. It's the only triangle that does that. 5 squared plus 12 squared equals 13 squared. It is, in fact, the second so-called Pythagorean triple. That's a triangle that has only pure integer sides. Most triangles do not. They're 1.3 and 2.8 and whatever. it has only integers. So clearly, Timothy Matlack's mistakes have been precisely measured and nudged into place just to lead us to the Great Seal and thus to this particular triangle. So whoever designed this puzzle is apparently telling us this triangle is significant in some way. So much so that it was baked into the design of the Great Seal 6 years in advance of its eventual debut on June 20th, 1782. Obviously, it was more important to them to seem to spoil their most important document than to not get this information out to posterity. Imagine that. So let's look then at the words that are surrounding that disconnected capstone with the single eye of providence peering out from it. It says, Annuit Septis. Now, a simple Google search reveals that basically this Latin phrase translates as favors undertakings. There's no God or our in there, yet by repetition and conventional acceptance, we all have come to believe it means God favors our undertakings. Okay, fine. The phrase surrounds the halo glow emanating from the eye, so it's reasonable to infer that its deeper meaning is God favors our undertakings. The founders are basically affirming that their goal is noble and thus surely the all-seeing one is in favor of what we're trying to do, separate from Britain. Now, Shakespeare was a Rosicrucian. They were forerunners of modern-day Freemasonry to some degree, and my 20 years' experience deciphering codes hidden in his works shows me that one of their favorite methodologies was to use anagrams to convey hidden meanings. And yes, there is a pure anagram hidden in Annuit Septis. In fact, the longest word that can be derived from those letters is, drum roll please, capstone, which is obviously as pertinent as can be, since it's a direct reference to the pyramid's capstone, which contains the divine eye. The letters left over produced the Latin word uniti, meaning united in, but it could hardly be any clearer, could it? United in the capstone. It could also be viewed as unit 1, and later I'll give you proof that that is what it's saying, but they really mean the same thing. The simple elegance of that solution makes one wonder why it's never been seen before now. Even the Latin word lends itself to a possible new interpretation, if we call that I a numeral 1. So 1 stands for unity, right? And the dollar bill that's been showing us this image since 1935 even has the number 1 itself prominently dividing two sides of the Great Seal. I've faded it out here, obviously, to give us space to do the anagrams. Now let's look at the lower phrase. Down at the bottom, it says Novus Ordo Seclorum, and I bet if I ask any of you what that means, most people will say, oh yeah, it means New Order of the Ages. Google search will tell you that. That's what it means. Once again, this is slightly inaccurate, based more on conventional acceptance than linguistic accuracy. Strictly speaking, the word seclorum means centuries, and its more correct spelling should be seclorum with an A. But I don't know, if you're going to risk your lives to do what these founders have finally decided they must do, there's no turning back. Surely you'd want your motto to say you're creating a new country that will last ages, yeah? Not merely centuries, wouldn't you? And the proper Latin word for that is aetatis. Now, hardly anyone seeing this at the time could read Latin anyway, and nobody does today, so aetatis fits just as well on that bottom scroll. You know, nobody would know. Why not use the more correct word? But no, they use the slightly less accurate word, and they spell it incorrectly. Why? Well, the simplest solution tells us a lot about the Freemasons' interest in geometry and the Egyptian heritage that they're determined to reference in building their new country. Mer is the original Egyptian word for pyramid. And locus is a geometrical term That means essentially a particular position, point, or place in 2D or 3D space, or, especially as used in mathematics, all the points satisfying a particular relationship between coordinates moving in space according to mathematically defined conditions. So Mare is self-explanatory. It gels perfectly with the image of the previous anagram, the capstone at the top. This leaves locus potentially having some connection to unit 1. But if we isolate locus, because it's kind of a mathematical instruction, how do the letters left over, Novus, Ordo, and Mare, combine that prior solution? All the points satisfying a particular relationship between coordinates moving in space according to mathematically defined conditions could be hinting at another aspect of what Freemasons are deeply interested in, the relative positions of the sun and the moon with respect to Earth. Now, this is not a stretch. As you're about to see, it's a fundamental foundation of Freemasonic philosophy concerning the Great Pyramid of Giza and Solomon's Temple. So from the letters left over, we can easily derive, sun? Is it the sun's locus? Or is it the moon locus? But a more thorough usage of almost all of the letters would be our moon's locus, the particular location of our own moon. Let's pursue that for a moment.
Alan, can I say something real quick?
Absolutely.
Your Honor. Well, I think it's of note. Ponch and I were looking up, and when the three of us were 3 and 1, well, just hit me, but we were looking at the date to do this. The moon is 27 Aquarius today, 72, the anagram for the name of God, but it's in the exact same location that they signed the Declaration of Independence today. So it's kind of amazing.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
I'm often looking at the phase of the moon, but I did not do it for today. So thanks for giving me that.
Yeah,
it's really interesting.
Yeah, it is. And so I got up early to take the dogs out before we started this, and there it was. And I was just staring at it this morning. It was still dark in San Diego, and I was like, "Wow,
interesting."
Yeah, yeah. So all right, I'm out.
So there you go. Well, that's not surprising, is it? Because who's really writing this? So the particular location of our own moon, Freemasons have long been fascinated with the curious phenomenon that the moon and the sun appear the same size in the sky. In reality, the sun is approximately 400 times larger in diameter than the moon, but is also approximately 400 times further away from the Earth than is the moon. This near perfect ratio is what allows the two bodies to appear the same size to our human sight and allows the phenomenon of a total eclipse of either celestial body. And the curious math does not stop there. This image shows the relative sizes of the Earth and Moon, as well as the apparent size of the Sun, in perfect proportion to each other. We draw a square blue around the Earth, whose side length is the diameter of the Earth. We'll draw a triangle in gold, whose base is that same length, the diameter of the Earth, and whose height is the radius of the Earth plus the radius of the Moon. We'll now draw a circle whose radius is the height of that triangle. And now the magic. Now, by the way, this is not my finding. This is all over the internet. I'm not taking credit for this at all. This is something that's been known for a long time. But the perimeter of that square in blue and the circumference of the circle in white are basically equal. They create a visual representation of the age-old conundrum called squaring of the circle. It's a geometric puzzle that has been proven to be impossible to draw perfectly using only compass and straight edge because of the irrationality of pi. Some people these days have said they've done it. They're not really fully understanding the irrationality of pi. You can get very, very, very close, but you can't actually do it. It's been proven wrong. So what is the Earth and the Moon doing with this particular relationship that seems to hint at this age-old conundrum? That's weird, right? Especially when the sun looks the same size as the moon as well at a certain time. So this phenomenon has puzzled philosophers, mathematicians, alchemists for centuries, and is a known fascination of the Freemasons, who believe there is something sacred in the way these planetary bodies have been created and positioned to reflect this extraordinary connection between the three most fundamental geometric shapes: circle, square, and triangle. But it goes much deeper. The triangle that connects the square to the circle is precisely the vertical cross-section of the Great Pyramid of Giza. What? Come on. Which begs the question, was the Great Pyramid built specifically to represent this curious planetary phenomenon? And how did they know? Blah, blah, blah. Or is it just, it's an inexplicable coincidence? Don't talk rubbish. They didn't even know pi. Come on, Alan, that's ridiculous. They've just come out of the Stone Ages. Right. The mystery goes even deeper. Goes even deeper when we look into the Freemasons' fascination with Solomon's Temple. Now, here's an overhead view of the floor plan of Solomon's Temple, as deduced from the measurements recorded in the Bible. One enters Solomon's Temple through the pillars, Yakin Boaz, which represent not only the heavens and the earth. Remember the first biblical, God made the heavens and the earth? But also they represent the moon and the sun. And the metaphor is that when one leaves earthly life, we pass through the heavens on our journey toward the dwelling place of God, known in the temple as the Holy of Holies, wherein was kept, yes, the Ark of the Covenant, believed by Jews to be the actual dwelling place of the Lord, seated between two large cherubim on the mercy seat of the Ark. Mystery seems to validate the solutions we've deduced so far from the other anagrams, because the Hebrew name for the Holy of Holies is, does anybody know it? It's this, and it's pronounced Devere. Now look at the letters that are left over on the Great Seal. Okay. Amazingly, there's yet another astronomical math constant that reveals another deep connection to the whole puzzle. It's called the lunar solar cycle, and it's based on the Earth's orbit around the sun, which is 12 months, and the moon's orbit around the Earth, which is 13 months. Okay, that
Come on,
12,
Alan, stop.
the 12th. I know it's not fair. Hey, I didn't write it.
Yeah.
Or maybe we all did. Yeah. That 12-13 relationship sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Don't foreshadow, Alan. Don't foreshadow.
It's the ratio hiding in the triangle defined by the slope angle of the Great Seal Pyramid. The lunar solar cycle is the time it takes for all three bodies, sun, moon, earth, to return to their starting locus. In other words, take them any position where they are, and in relation to each other, their locus. How long will it take for them moving in all these different cycles, a 13-month cycle, a 12-month cycle, which are months, by the way. That's where we get the word month from. Months, 12 months, 13 months. Months. How long does it take for them to return to their starting locus, their position in relation to each other? How long is that cycle? And it is, well, lo and behold, it's 33 years. Another Freemasonic reference to their highest degree level of Grandmaster. Maybe that's part of why they choose 33. I don't know. There's other reasons given. 33 vertebrae in the spine. Christ was 33 years old when he was crucified, etc., etc. But that one I didn't know until I started researching the Declaration. It's a lunar solar cycle. Huh. Imagine that. So clearly that triangle is telling us there's unity in the 12 and 13 sides that refer to the lunar solar cycle. And the cycle of 33 years brings unity to the two contrasting cycles of sun and moon in their relation to Earth, in other words, to their joint interrelated locus or location. So probably AI has something to say about this now. It's got some more data. And what it said was the probability of random chance for so many consistent alignments is extremely low, though an exact number is impractical. It is certainly far less than 1 in millions, and likely far smaller yet by standard cryptographic methods. I think we should probably pause for a breath. You want to discuss this for a moment? What is going on here?
Alan, it's almost unbelievable, right? So it's as though people only see what they expect to see. So if you go looking for these things, you're going to find them. So I can find people that may act as devil's advocate and say, it doesn't mean anything. It's just noise, right? But the numbers that you put into AI and that you can calculate suggest otherwise. That there are no coincidences, and I didn't know that until a few years ago that things happen for reasons, right? The reason Bart and I connected again after 20 plus years, the reason he introduced me to you, the reason we're talking about flow states and understanding that when we're in a state of flow, that information comes to us, and sometimes things just happen through us that we just can't comprehend. And it doesn't matter. It's what's happening that matters. It's who cares about the why? What? And what you just shared with us is here's what an accounting is of the history, or a little bit of a history of the documents that created our country. This is an accounting from Alan Green of what happened. And why this is important is when we talk about the art and science of debriefing or learning from multiple perspectives, you have to take into account what other people see. And this is critically important in a world where weak signals get drowned out because the predominant narrative, or the dominant narrative, is 83% of the population sees things one way while 17% see them another way. And it's that 17% where we get the idea of inattentional blindness that we need to pay attention to. And what I'm trying to get to here, Alan, is as unbelievable as this may seem to some of our listeners and viewers, it is an accounting of what happened or what's happening now, which is called situational awareness as well. And actually, the third level of situational awareness is projection, anticipating what's next, looking ahead. And the only way you can anticipate what's next is by understanding what happened in the past, right? And in fact, that's what Bart and I talk about when we talk about the science of debriefing from fighter aviation. The only way you can anticipate what's coming next is if you understand what happened in the past. Bart, I want to hear your thoughts. What's going through your mind?
Yeah, Alan, unbelievable. But what I keep thinking about Ponch actually is Cal, the guy I went through Top Gun with, Cal Worthington, and how his first debrief at Top Gun, he didn't understand. You learn a lot of things, Alan, at Top Gun. One of the best is how to write on a whiteboard, believe it or not. And you had multiple colors, and you used to put I would just put them in my fingers, right? Cal really didn't know how to do that. So he was literally using his mouth in his first 1v1 debrief to pull apart the caps from the pens. And by the end of the debrief, he was like a rainbow. He had pen marks all over his face. Yeah. But where I'm going with that is, we were required to, there you go, Ponch. See, that's what millions of dollars of training taught us. But we were required to reconstruct the fight. Right, we had to go up on the whiteboard and draw it out, right? And in doing that, you're just basically what Ponch was saying is you're reinforcing what you saw, and you're also increasing your ability to remember it. Which, oh, by the way, if you have that same situation occur in the air again, then you know how to react without thinking, right?
Yeah.
And so, I have right now 5. You can say 5.2, or I guess I don't know how you describe it. I have my two of my daughters have buns in the oven. I actually call them spacemen. I'm like, in growing up with my daughters, I told them, I go, you guys are vessels of life, right? The female is without a doubt the most powerful force in the world. I believe it, right? But ultimately, they're vessels of life. And so I'm like, how's the little spaceman doing? Because that little dude or dudette in there is rolling, right? But so I have 7. I have by the end of this year, or by the end of September, I'll have 7 grandkids, and it's incredible. And I think about getting them sacred geometry coloring books, right? Because none of this is taught, right? And I don't know why, right? I'm not a conspiracy theorist. It's just, it's not taught. And where I'm going with this is just this past 20 minutes or 30 minutes that Alan's been describing, just this, we haven't even gotten into the meat of it yet. It makes you in awe that we get to occupy these meat suits, right? That we have this 3-dimensional experience. And if we could just teach people, and where I'm going with it is the framers were showing us, right? When maybe we were ready to hear it or see it, right? For those with eyes to see, ultimately they were telling us, right? And so this document in the dollar bill, and it's trying to show us how incredible this experience is of life, right?
But,
Go. And I was just going to say,
So
and it goes back to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right?
So
look at this mosaic we have. That's where I'm at. Go
So
ahead.
I struggle with this potential idea that these documents were precisely engineered by a person. I can't accept that. And the reason I can't accept that is I don't know anybody that bright that could do something like that. However,
You could, Ponch.
No. I mean, it would just maybe it's possible, but here's another possibility, and that is, again, artists when they do things, or musicians when they do things, it just flows through them. They're present. They're in a novel environment. There's risk involved, and I think our founding fathers had a lot of risk when they were doing this, right? They saw the novelty in the environment. They had great communication skills. They knew one, or I think they actually knew one another in a way, maybe through Freemasonry or another way. But the point behind that is, anytime we create anything as humans, things that are novel, we're generally in a state of flow. And it's either through, for the individuals out there, when you're in yoga, when you're exercising, when you're meditating, when you're doing these things, information flows through you, or to you and through you, from somewhere. And it doesn't matter where. What matters is what is created out of that. And it's just my view of this is, I don't think this isn't an engineering problem. This isn't an engineer going out there and designing this thing. This is something that's flowing through people and is co-created by, again, some entity or entities, or just the fact that we're sharing one major consciousness out there. So just Ponch's thoughts on this. I just, I struggle to think that one person designed this. I do believe that is flowing through us.
That's a great point, Ponch. Go ahead, Alan. Go ahead, please.
Oh, you've just hit on the central question that consumed me at round about this point. Now it's going to go much deeper, so hang on. to where you do have to wrestle with that question seriously, and then. So I don't know if you've seen the whole of the America Codes, Ponch, but if you still think there's no one person that can do it, then I've somehow have not been able to convey that properly, because Benjamin Franklin was the person to be able to do that. And Benjamin Franklin, as I show in parts that I can't show today in this, used to create magic squares. And mathematically, as they get larger and larger, they get more and more complex. Now, he created a 16 by 16 magic square, where every row and every column and even diagonals all added up to 2056. So he puts two numbers from 1 to 256 in a 16 by 16. That's 4 chessboards. In his head, and he admits in his autobiography, he says, I did this because I was so bored at the Pennsylvania Assembly. I just amused myself by creating magic squares with pencil and paper. He did it in his head.
Yeah.
So he was one of those beings who is capable of thinking very, very large, complex mathematics that he could look at. He could look at 6,771 characters and arrange to show certain things. Now, it gets so deep that you are confronted ultimately with, but is he making prophecies about America? All of that thing comes into play later. So you've got to understand that at some point it reaches a balance, which is is it divine influence of a vessel unknowing? I just don't know. I'm just writing this out, but I'm being guided by divine consciousness. And there's some of that in this because a character shows up in the middle. Again, I won't be able to show you today because it's all too much. It's 22 videos. It's about 7 hours of stuff. And it goes even deeper than that ultimately. But, Saint Germain is the character whose name shows up in the absolute center of the Declaration. And Saint Germain is well known for being a guy who shows up every so often at important events on Earth. He's a divine character. He's an angelic being. And so I think it's a bit of both. And ultimately, you were left to then conclude, well, what's the difference actually? I am divine. I have divinity within me. I must acknowledge that. I also must acknowledge I'm pretty dense and not fully understanding my divinity, but it doesn't alter my belief in the fact that we are gods, as we're told over and over in every scripture. So let me take you on the next step of this, because it's going to either make it clearer or your heads are going to explode. So one or the other.
It's a lot to get Ponch's head to explode, Alan. You know that.
Yeah. Oh, this is great. Appreciate this. The conversation is fantastic, Alan. Just to be able to share with folks that, hey, look, it's not. Benjamin Franklin, maybe De Vere, maybe Da Vinci, maybe they're just conduits for all this information to flow through. Maybe there are others out there. Maybe Bart has a little bit of that in him as well, and you, Alan Green, and others that are, the Chris Bledsoes of the world that are talking about these amazing things. It doesn't mean they're conspiracy theorists. It just means they have an orientation, access to things that others don't, and that's okay.
Hey, well, let's not give conspiracy theory a bad name. Conspiracy theory is used to tar all truth with a bad name. A conspiracy, by definition, is simply something agreed upon by 2 or more people. The idea has come to be used as a derogatory term. Oh, he's a conspiracy theorist. Inherent in the name itself is now, it's not true, he's nuts. So please be careful how we use that expression, conspiracy theory, because it's a misnomer. Conspiracy theory, Christ said in the Bible, wherever 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I am, there am I. That's where you get the word synagogue from. Synagogue means gathered in one place, synagogue. It's literally 2 or 3 people coming together to pray with their God and however they want to pray. Conspiracy. Anyway, I have a bit of a bone to pick about that. So
no, thank you.
It's the same bone I have to pick about calling our friends aliens. And nobody's alien; they're extra-dimensional or extraterrestrial. Alien has this negative connotation of, oh, you're some other. This is other, alien to me. It's a bad misnomer. But let me get off my high horse and share the screen again and get into where we're going. I
appreciate that. This is why we do this, Alan. Really do appreciate this.
That's all right. So next, I have to take you on what seems like a detour, but it is not, believe me. I used to teach piano, right? I've been a musician my whole life. Taught piano to hundreds of students in Pacific Palisades, which is just almost wiped off the map recently. Devastating. And the kids that I taught were in very, 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 very wealthy families, and I gave them something to do as a little puzzle. I drew a basic line drawing of the Great Pyramid, and this is how it happened. I'm not making this up. I just started it out as a game. I called it the games afoot because that's a Shakespeare quote. The games afoot. This is the Great Pyramid marked out with points on its base, and the base could be these blue lines. The half base could be these light blue lines, any of those. The diagonals, there's two of them in gold. There's a vertical height, there's only one of those, that's in green. There's a corner slope height, there's four of those. And there's side slopes in purple. And I literally, I had no idea where this was going. I just thought it would be a cool game to say, draw this on paper, take a pencil, start at any point on the perimeter, draw at least one of each type of line. Got to do one of each, at least, without detaching pen from paper or retracing lines, pass through all 9 points on the base, and in the fewest lines possible, finish at the pyramidion. And if you do it and you sort of start trying to do it and work it out, it takes about half an hour, maybe 45 minutes. You'll find a way to join them all without retracing your lines and without taking your pen off the paper. And then the shortest possible number of lines is 8 lines. And this is how you do it. And if I'm going to spoil it for you, you could always pause and draw this, print it out yourself and try it, because it's kind of fun. But it's just a simple game, I thought, to amuse my piano students and teach them something about music as well as about geometry at the same time, because where this was going for me was basically the 8 notes of the white scale on the piano and all that. And I thought I'm teaching them something about, geometry at the same time without them even thinking that they are learning something. This is how you do it. Go from here to here, and I mark those in green. Then you go down there and across there, and I mark those in red. Then you go diagonal, and another base, another half base, up the side, and you've done it. There's 8 moves. We know that the traditionally accepted values of the height of the Great Pyramid, were it to go to its missing pyramidion, by the way, it has no pyramidion there, but if you follow the lines to where the geometry takes you to a point, it would be 280 cubits high, and we know it's 440 cubits base. And from those 2 simple numbers, everything else follows. You can calculate all the other values, and you don't need to know the math of how it's done, but there they are. The corner slope, side slope, diagonal. It even predicts the angle of here, which is 51.843 degrees. It's dependent on the height. It's just Pythagorean theory again. So I gave him this puzzle, but then I looked a little deeper at it, and I thought, I wonder what these measurements actually turn out to be. That's 220 plus 280, that's 500 cubits. And then these two added together are this number, sort of a complicated number, but I took it to 5 decimal places, all worked out by Pythagorean theory, and those give us that number. And I again, acting on, I had bronchitis at the time, so I was getting a lot of downloads coming. I was going, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to divide that number by 858.56899. Just divide it by itself. It's going to be 1. Takes it to 1 cubit. So I've reduced the red, down to exactly 1 cubit. What happens if I do the same with each of the others? I divide that by that 858.56, blah, 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 blah. And I get a number that's that cubits. But it turns out that in cubits is 1 foot. And I'm going, wait a minute. That's how accurate is that? Accurate to 3/5,000ths of a foot, like a hair. What happens if I do the same here? It's 1.90823 cubits, but that turns out to be 1 meter. Holy shit. What? accurate to 4 or 5 thousandths of a meter. And you can imagine I was gobsmacked at the surprise that came to me. It was just like, what? Why was I led to even think of that game? And why then take it to this and to realize the Great Pyramid is housing foot, cubit, and meter in its basic proportions. How can that
Alan,
be?
this was all accidental, right? This wasn't, you just followed a path, just like you showed us.
Just started it as a game for my students. I was not
Okay.
thinking in terms of making some major discovery or anything. It just turned out that it was this. And AI liked that, and it said, well, wow, okay. Give me an increased precision conclusion, given that all that is actually inherent in the Great Pyramid, the foot, the cubit, meets the probability of random chance for so many consistent alignments is extremely low. Though an exact number is impractical, it's certainly less than 1 in billions that this is random. Now it's talking about the Great Pyramid and those numbers. It can't just be there randomly. And I'm going to take you through the logic of that by drawing a timeline from the beginning of creation, 13.82 billion years ago, to now. Obviously, it's not to scale. Here's 2560 BC, Egyptian Fourth Dynasty, where they say the Great Pyramid was built. Many of us think it was built way earlier than that, during the last golden age, or even further back. But anyway, they want to say it's there because they're constrained by their own logic. You know, it can't have been built by monkeys, and we've just come out of the dark ages of Stone Age. So they're stuck with that. Okay, which came first? I thought to myself, constants or measures? Well, constants are by definition what? Constant. The circumference of a circle is always going to be pi. You can't imagine a universe in which it is not going to be that particular number with 3.142, etc., 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 because it's geometry. It's just the radius of the circle is going to determine how big the circumference is. And it's the same with others like the golden ratio and Euler number, which doesn't come until later. So it turns out that in this exploration, I ended up finding 12 mathematical constants in the Great Pyramid itself, just by doing combinations of basic proportions. I wasn't looking to go there, but I did, and I'm not going to go there now because it's not part of what I want to show you. But basically, the Supreme Council of Antiquities says, well, this is just sheer luck. Of course, it's you know the movie. He's Sherlock Holmes, and he's going, yeah. Oh, it's Sherlock Holmes. He says, and you know, Sherlock Holmes. No, his name isn't Sherlock. It's sheer luck. It's just sheer luck that all those constants are there, and you know, I cannot be real. They just accidentally built it to where that came out. What about measures, though? Measures aren't forever, are they? Measures are surely the way man has decided to measure the constants. And yet I've just found them in the Great Pyramid, cubit, foot, and meter. But they're man-made. I mean, someone in mankind decides this length is a banana, and I'm going to call this measure the banana, right? Or the foot, or what it ends up being. But there seems to be some point in our history where a thinking being says, I'm going to call this particular distance a certain value, right? Okay. So we know that the cubit was in use during biblical times and prior to building the Great Pyramid, because we know that everything they build in the Great Pyramid has basically cubits in it. So we know that. That definitely had to have existed prior to the building of the Great Pyramid. But foot? I mean, wasn't that the Roman Empire? Around 100 BC to 400 AD? And a meter? Wasn't that the French Revolution? 1795? How can they all be here? Weren't they developed at different times by different cultures in different places on the planet? Luck. So this makes you think, well, we got to think deeper about this. If the meter and the foot and the cubit are all there in the basic proportions of the pyramid, they had to have pre-existed. What does that mean? And I had to take it further and say, well, how are they connected then? This foot, we call that 1. What is the cubit again? The cubit is 1.718 feet. Oh, but that turns out to be Euler number. Foot and cubit. And 2.718 is the Euler number, which has a very, very, very specific quality. Yes, go ahead.
Just to add a little bit, Ponch. So, Alan, using the all-time low on the S&P and going up to the 2007 high and projecting the recent, who knows if it's an all-time high, but the recent all-time high in the S&P, bless you, was exactly 2.71828.
Yeah,
it was an Euler number projection.
Again, probably nothing, right, guys? I mean, just just ignore it.
Sheer luck.
Sheer luck. That's it. Yeah. So real quickly,
you say
Alan,
that great, by the way, Alan. Sheer luck. I love it.
Euler number. We've got a lot of knuckle draggers, including myself, on the show. That are like, "What the hell is the Euler number?"
I'm going to explain it to you.
I hope so. Thank you.
I'm not going to just leave you hanging. Come on, you know me. I'm going to go into depths that you had never even imagined, and you didn't want to. But here it goes. That means that the cubit is E minus 1, right? The cubit, the E is foot plus cubit, 2.718. The cubit at 1.78 is Euler minus 1. Okay, we follow that much, right? Minus the 1 is E minus 1.
Yep.
Okay. What is this thing called Euler? Jacob Bernoulli in 1683 was trying to figure out how he could make the biggest profit from loaning money by interest. And he said, well, interest is one thing, it's all cool, but what if I charge compound interest? That means I charge not interest just on the principal, but once you've got some interest, I'm charging interest on the interest. And what if I charged, instead of compound interest, one every year, every month? What if every week? What if every day? What if every minute? And he just did the math and worked out that if you had something called constant compound interest, it works out to be this equation. 1 is the dollar that you borrowed from the bank. 1.718 is the compound interest if it's calculated constantly from the moment it's borrowed, so that ultimately the total you owe the bank is E. The total sum is 2.718. You owe the bank the dollar that you borrowed, plus you owe them $1.718 of the interest over the term of the loan. Now, this turns out to be a number, though, that shows up in calculus, in probability theory, in population growth, in spread of diseases, in radioactive energy. It's everywhere. It's a balance to our one that we know a lot more about, the golden ratio, phi, which is artistic. It's the right brain. It's beauty in art and form. E is a scientific, but they're both measures of growth. So it's used in art, it's in nature, it's in forms, and here it's in equations and calculus and trigonometry. But they're two basic constants that are inviolable in the universe. They just simply are. They work, and we know a lot about that, and you don't need me to tell you about that. So that's E. That's Euler number. Does that answer your question, Ponch? What it really is, it's a fixed number.
No, 100%. The way you described it is spot on. Thank you.
So it means that if you want to bring it to the banking analogy, foot is the principal that you invest, the amount that you, if you're the person investing and you're charging the compound interest, the interest that accrues from the loan of that comes back as a natural law is 1.718. That's the cubit. The cubit is the interest that you get on the foot. Isn't that interesting? Wow. We've been told all along that the foot is the length of some guy's foot, and the cubit is the length from the elbow to the fingertips. No. In fact, it's very encouraging because it means no, it's not some random thing. We all know that feet vary and people's arms vary. Isn't it much more comforting to know that the universe is based on pure mathematics? You know, it's not going to fall apart because the divine, whoever built it, maybe it was Fred next door, whoever built it is making it subject to inviolable constants, laws that are reliable, that always operate. So you then think, well, is there a connection then between the cubit and the meter then? I mean, why are they here? The meter measured 3.281 feet. Is there a connection, just as there's a connection between foot and cubit that is special E of growth in the world? Is there another connection? Well, the French developed the meter, didn't they? They sent people to measure the quarter polar circumference of the Earth from the equator to the North Pole. And after having measured it, they just said, and this to me is mind-boggling too, they just said, let us say that it is, let us divide this distance by 10 million. Let us say 1/10,000,000th of this distance is the metre. That's what they said. They called it the meter. And at least it's based on science. At least it's based on the actual physical property of the Earth, which the foot and the cubit didn't seem to be if they were just some guy's foot. Right? No, it's scientific. So they were led to guide to that. Now, what is the connection then? If you take a circle that is a meter in radius, we know from, again, Pythagorean theory, the circumference is going to be 2 pi r. I mean, we just know that, whether we understand it or not. It's 2 pi times the radius. Okay? And if the radius is the meter, then it's 2 pi meters is the circumference. And if we take half of that circumference, then that part is just pi meters, 3.142 meters. And if you draw a 30-degree angle here, well, that's 30, 30, 30, 30. If you think of this as a slice of pie, how many slices are there in this pizza? There's 6. So this arc there is 1/6 of pi. It's pi over 6. You with me so far?
Tracking, yes.
Okay. Well, pi over 6, we can measure it, right? And it's 0.5236. All right. Let's take these measurements for cubit and meter. The cubit, because we're looking for the connection between cubit and meter, aren't we? Is there a connection? Well, that 1.718, let's divide it by the 3.281 feet. That's the cubit in feet and the meter in feet. It turns out to be, look at that, the same. The cubit is this piece of the arc of the circle. That is a cubit when this is a meter. Holy shit again. There is a connection that the world doesn't know about. I unveiled this 8 years ago at a conference, CPAC, Conference on Precession and Ancient Knowledge. It was well received, got a standing ovation and all that, not blowing my own trumpet, except for the fact that it didn't go any further. You know, science didn't hear about it. Nobody went, oh my God, Alan, you've solved the thing that Newton was trying to solve. I mean, no, it's just, okay. Why? Because we do not think in terms of cubits anymore. We know a foot is this measure, and we know a meter is that measure, but we haven't used cubits in 2,000 years. So nobody understands the connection between 1 and 3.281 is meaningful at all, even though it's pi over 6, because we don't use cubits. Haven't for 2,000 years. Once you put the cubits into the thing, we realize, there's a personal, universal connection between all of these. Not only that, if you add the cubit and the meter together in feet, guess what it is? It's 4 0.99996 feet. That's 5 feet to within the radius of a red blood corpuscle. It's basically 5 feet. It's not measurable. It's utterly insignificant. It's less than a hair. It's a fucking corpuscle. It's a blood cell way down, right? And we don't know this. Science doesn't know it. That means if you add the foot to it, it's 6 feet. So now you've got, there's a 5 feet and a 6 feet. So the foot is connected to the cubit, is connected to the meter, is connected back to the foot. It's like a universal constant of measure. It's not just 3 separate measures. They are interwoven. It's like an Ouroboros swallowing its own tail. The foot becomes the cubit, becomes the meter, becomes the foot, becomes the cubit, becomes the meter. On and on and on.
And here's something. Go ahead, Alan. Sorry. Go ahead. Sorry. No. Please finish.
Well, I was just going to say it's a huge deal. But why am I telling you this? Is it connected to the Declaration of Independence? Yes, of course it is. Because that is unit 1, without doubt. The foot is the principal unit of measure that then produces the compound interest of the cubit, which has a pi relationship, a circular relationship to the meter, which when you add the cubit to the meter has a relationship to the foot of 5 to 6, and the 6 to 5. It all ties in, and that's why it's embedded in the Great Pyramid. This is unit 1, which is what they're telling us here. The 1 unit is our moon's locus, unit 1, capstone, the letters left over, De Vere. What? What is the De Vere? What is the De Vere? We need to now think in terms of, De Vere comes from the root word devarim in Hebrew, which means word. In fact, it comes from book of words is Deuteronomy, which is also known in Hebrew as Devarim. It's the book of Moses' words. When in Shakespeare's play Polonius asks Hamlet what he's reading, he answers, words, words, words. He's pretending to be insane. But he's essentially saying, De Vere, De Vere, De Vere, which we'll revisit later, because that is the name of the real Shakespeare, Edward De Vere. He's giving his name away in the play Hamlet. But for now, it's enough to understand De Vere conveys the ultimate sacred meaning of what the Bible tells us is happening at the beginning of creation. So in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, line 1, in the beginning, God created the heaven and earth. In John, the other gospel that tells us the birth of creation myth, in John chapter 1, verse 1, line 1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Both telling us the same thing. They're telling us De Vere is the beginning of creation. In fact, Genesis 1, 3, the 3 in 1, he says, let there be light. In other words, it's the same thing. The deepest possible meaning given in both the biblical quotes is unmistakably conveying what happens at the very beginning of creation. John calls the manifestation the Word. Moses calls it light. But by definition, they're really both the same phenomenon, the vibration that starts creation going. Consciousness starts as unity, decides, to have a creation, and by definition becomes what? Duality. Light, dark, heat, cold, electron, proton, male, female, yin, yang, ad infinitum, to be or not to be. The vibration can be of low frequency, sound, or of highest frequency, light, but they're essentially the same. It's what the Vedic scriptures call the Om vibration, which can be both heard and seen in deep meditation. So are the founders hiding within their code the fundamental truth about the beginning of creation? Is that why it's emanating out of the halo of light surrounding the single eye? De Vere, in its ultimate manifestation, is the word, Devarim, the light. And perhaps all that's needed is to obey the command of the two Latin phrases on the Great Seal of America. So let's put our moon's locus at the capstone. It's positive, its position in relation to the earth and the sun. The unit 1 is the foot, as defined in the universal constant of measure in the Great Pyramid, which I found 8 years ago and had no idea it was leading to here. It all started as a game that I started with my piano students. And De Vere, the Holy of Holies, the original vibration, light. What are they telling us? Okay, so they're saying they're all united in the capstone. Okay, so how do we figure that out? We know the average distance Earth to Moon, their locations, their locus, in miles. We can just look it up on NASA's website. It's 238,855 miles. But apparently we're being told to convert that into feet. Unit 1, right? So 238,855 times 5280, number of feet in a mile, gives us this. All right, 1,261,154,400 feet. What other number do we have at our disposal that we haven't used? I mean, okay, we know the distance Earth to the Moon in feet now. What does that mean? At the bottom of the pyramid on the Great Seal, it tells us in Roman numerals, 1776, but they told us to reverse it, didn't they? I mean, Believe me, when I started looking at this, I divided it by 1776. And it didn't give anything. And then I went, yeah. I know. I gotta reverse it. Mirror image. Can it be that simple? Divide the average distance Earth to Moon, 126115440 by 6771. What does it give us? Let's try it. It gives us the speed of light.
Alan, I'm concerned the CIA and everybody's going to come after us and shut us down. This is insane.
Let them try. Speed of light in miles per second to 99% accuracy. Now AI steps in and says, what the fuck is what it said, actually. No, given multiple thematically consistent codes of anagram, geometry, numerology, precise numeric coincidences, the combined probability that Green's America code's discoveries all happen by random chance is astronomically small. Far less than 1 in a trillion. The possibility of everything being random is effectively negligible. Okay, so
Wow.
1 in a trillion is the same as 1 out of the number of stars in the Milky Way galaxy.
So you're close.
We need to pause. So you're saying there's a chance.
That's where I was going.
1 in a trillion. Yeah.
So I love that scene. She says to him,
I love it. Go.
Jim Carrey's asking the girl, can I date you? And she says, what are the chances? She says, I'd say 1 in a million. And he waits for about 5 seconds. He goes, so you're telling me there's a chance? Just brilliant.
So, Ponch, before you start, I was just blown away by go, Alan, cough up. By the way, you're doing great too. But I was blown away by and again, even the very hairs on our head are numbered, right? And it's just so bizarre, right? That, and again, I've studied the Bible, right?
You're bald, aren't you?
I still got my hair.
I'm sorry. You still got some. Okay.
I got a little bit. But, that's awesome, Alan. You'd be a great fighter pilot hanging out in the ready room, feeding each other shit. But, the square root of 1.618 is 127, right? And even the very hairs on your head are numbered as Luke 12,
Yeah.
7, 1, 2, 7, right? And so where I'm going with it is, Ponch, and again, I want you from the OODA loop and all, like, what is happening here? Because if we take the high, okay, in 2007, and I think, don't quote me on it, but I think it was like 1577, okay?
On the S&P or on the Dow?
Yes.
Okay.
S&P.
Okay.
And we take the tangent of 30, right, which is 0.577, and we multiply 0.577 times the high on the Dow, and then we subtract that number, we get the exact low in 2009, 666, which in a way got...
You guys should be billionaires. What are you doing with this? Come on.
In time.
Work in progress.
Work in progress.
Yeah.
But where I'm going with it, Ponch, is how are billions of people, millions of people, right, subconsciously converting these numbers, into taking action? That was the low, right? And so as Alan put the graph up there with 30-degree angle, I'm like, oh yeah. And so I needed to bring it up. Now, the other thing Ponch and I were talking about yesterday, or maybe it was a day ago, Alan, especially I'm sitting, the way I see this video is I'm between two musicians, right? I'm not one. But that same high that occurred in 2007, if you take the low, right, in 2003, and you simply multiply that low by 1.05946, 12 through to 2, which is the equal octave scale of music, it precisely does 12. It precisely does 12 notes. Precisely. And it gets even better, Alan. The high date was the equal octave scale of music plus the next note.
Mm.
So what is going on?
What is going on is Hamlet's quote, "There are more things in heaven and earth a ratio than are dreamed of in our philosophy." In other words, we don't have the faintest idea what's going on. We have no idea. And one of the things that I love to contemplate in all of this is, it's just beginning now to get interesting, isn't it? It's going to go deep in a moment. This is a truly extraordinary and somewhat shocking mathematical fact to consider, isn't it? I mean, just imagine what
they had to start it in 1776.
You got it. 1776 is non-negotiable. The only way for this equation to work out to near 100% accuracy, remember the speed of light was 99.99% accurate, would be for the divisor 6771 to be one digit less. If it was 6770, that gives 186,285.7. And since we know the true value of the speed of light is 186,282, that's the closest possible result. For that to work, the Declaration of Independence would have had to have been written in the year 776 AD, 1,000 years earlier. And conversely, waiting for 1777 would give a mirror image of 7771, which wouldn't work at all. So you're left with the impossible conundrum. Wait a minute, can we fully grasp the implications are that the inevitable conclusion is if this is all intentionally created, a message of perfection, the year 1776, as Bart just said, non-negotiable, predestined. And I actually asked this question of ChatGPT. I told our AI I was not asking it to confirm predestiny, only to consider, is there a truly viable alternative possibility? Because I knew there isn't. There isn't. You can't put any other number in there and make that work to give you distance moon from the Earth, but it's got to be in unit 1, and it can only be unit 1 if somebody's already calculated the universal constant of measure. Because that was not known. Newton spent his life trying to find the universal constant of measure. And I'm not equating myself to Newton. I'm just simply saying he couldn't find it because they hadn't yet invented the meter. Right? He didn't know there was such a thing as a meter, so he couldn't find it. Once you'd found it, you realize, oh, we haven't found it. We're just remembering it from way, 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 way back. It has to already exist because it's a universal constant. It's tied. The foot becomes the cubit, becomes the meter, becomes the 5 feet, becomes the 6 feet, it's done. It is written. So we are dealing with a very, very now prickly conundrum. Who the hell is writing this? And as if you watch the whole 22 videos of the America Codes, the reason it is so long and deep and goes into so many other rabbit holes, you begin to realize, wait a minute, it's the redundancy of showing you this that way and that way and that way. And by the way, it's also the moon and the earth with the square around and the circle and the triangle is the triangle of the Great Pyramid, by the way. What the hey? I don't. You have to reach a point where your mind goes, I give up. I don't know what the hell is going on because I'm not used to this level of perfection. If we think about it, though, if we really were to think about perfection, we just don't. But we'd be tapping this table and saying, this isn't a table. This is a conglomeration of electrons and protons. And I know that science tells me that there's 99.9999999% space. And that it's all hanging together by electromagnetism and gravitation. And that is a miracle in itself. Everything that we are, our bodies, the hairs on our head, as Bart says, everything that we know is really a code. And you're left with the slightly, if you're, it can be an uncomfortable feeling of, I can't accept that this world is that perfect, but everything is. I shouldn't be talking to you now and sending these. What are we sending between each other here that we can even talk? Me in India, you in New York, and pictures on a screen, but we don't think about that. We think about, what about them Lakers?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Who cares?
We don't think about how perfect this whole thing is that we are living in, that is us. Right.
Bam!
So last thing.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you. No, keep going. You're elucidating exactly what I was talking about to start this.
Mm-hmm.
So
fall in love with this life.
So we just saw something impossible.
Pretty much.
If you want it, pretty impossible. That the moon distance is important. What are they telling us about the sun and the moon looking so the same in the sky? Oh no, it can't be. Can it? Are we supposed to? What are we supposed to measure the distance Earth to sun and put that in the capstone? Our sun's locus. And use unit 1, the foot, as defined in the universal, and find out what De Vere is that way. It just gave us the speed of light. Nah. Imagine I'm literally, I know I'm in the middle of this at this point, and I'm going, well, I know that that's what we have to do because this is real, and they somehow have tapped into this, and they are trying to tell us across 250 years ago, please, somebody see this. We haven't hidden it at all. Matlack put the mistakes in there and left them with a freaking little carrot pointing to them. One of the people that I first showed this to when I first released the American Code said, so why has all this been hidden? I said, it's not hidden at all. It's us who have been refusing to see it. It's right there in the Declaration. If you look at it, it doesn't make any sense at all that the mistakes are there. He had plenty of time. Wasn't signed on July 4th. Wasn't signed till August 2nd. Got plenty of time to do it, but they left him in. Left the mistakes there.
Alan, I want to put something in here. I learned this a few years ago. The idea that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Right?
Yeah.
Right. And I think what's happening now is
the planet is ready.
People are ready on the planet, right? And let me just try, I'll probably be a little derogatory here. So veterans are a little bit different. And Bart brought up that quote early on in this conversation. And what's happening here is veterans will lead the way. Veterans have been in combat. We fight, we do some horrible things, and we kind of come back into society, and that's what's happening. And in my opinion, the reason you're having this conversation with two veterans is because I'm going to, again, I mean, no offense to anybody when in saying this, we're not flowing robe freaks. You know what I mean? We're not that people. We're people that come from, basic America, seen some horrible things. And now we're coming back and saying, hey, look at it from this perspective. And let's connect these ideas here. And that's the medium is the message. We have the ability to connect between the East Coast and India right now to have this conversation. Technology is accelerating. The idea of adjacent possibles, which is really more things today that are reconnected and reconstructed into snowmobiles, means more things tomorrow, which we have absolutely no choice but to come together and have these conversations, right? So again, it's just I don't mean any disrespect to anybody out there by saying those things. It's just that the credibility factor, and I hope that's what this is our community, the veteran community is really coming together on a lot of these things through PTSD, TBI, looking at different modalities of how to recover and leading the way. And that I'll just leave it at that. But thank you for that. And it's just an amazing opportunity to have this conversation. Sorry, I kind of got sidetracked there.
No,
quit apologizing, Ponch. It needs to be said.
I cannot even imagine what veterans go through. I mean, most of us cannot. And so the absolute seeming disdain for them presently in the political system is just as disgusting as you can even imagine. It's just like, what? I cannot imagine having put your life on the line.
Yeah. It's powerful, Alan.
Go ahead.
And that's why suicide is so, it kills us, Ponch and I, on a daily basis. We're trying to help. Ponch was on a podcast with Hedgeye and Keith, and this guy's in his 50s. Ponch and I are talking about this, right? He's retired from the Navy, and he saw the podcast, and he called Ponch immediately, and he was about to kill himself, right? And Ponch and a group of brothers that we all worked together were able to get him treatment. We saved his life, right? And so when you think about what we're talking about here, we're talking about life. We're talking about this grand experiment, right? I can't wait to step outside this door and see how perfect it is, right?
To be reminded of that.
And I don't want to say what the punchline is of this entire talk, Alan, because I know you're getting to it. And I've watched both. I've watched the American Codes 44 times. I've watched it twice, right? So I know where this is all going. And so
You're the
one.
one.
Hold on. Well, I just wanted to have a clue what we're going to talk about a little bit. But, it when we get to the end of this, it's going to reframe.
Yeah, well, I'm not going there because I can't possibly go there tonight. There's no way of covering it because you can't leap to that without going through the other. What I'm showing you here is about the first 3 to 4 episodes is all I'm going through.
Yeah.
But I'm
we're
saying,
all one.
Enjoy it. We are. Well, I'll get to that part. We're going to get to that.
Sorry. Shit.
We're not going to get to the TH. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's carry on. Thank you, guys. This is very emotional, isn't it? Because my dad was a vet. He was thrown into World War II, and all I knew of him was that he was a very horrible person, and I didn't understand that, when I was a kid, that he beat up on my mum and me and was pretty vicious, and But he was later in life. I began to realize what he must have gone through. He was supposed to go over on D-Day. And he got what's called a 1 million pound wound. He got shrapnel in his ear, and they put him in the hospital, and he missed D-Day, and all his friends died. And then he went over later when it was safer, and he relieved Dachau. and saw what had been done there. And so he came back a broken man.
I'm sorry.
And of course, you don't know that. You don't understand that as a kid. And he couldn't understand it, and he didn't know how to express it, and he just became very bitter. But I'm getting an understanding of it now, and the idea that, oh my God, I mean, how can people live with what they have seen and are made to do? You are almost the only people who can bring the horror of where we are headed to our realizations. The rest of us who sit back in relative peace and tranquility and don't have the respect to even rent. I can't begin talking about it because it's an alien world to me, but I'm beginning to open up to it and realize, my God, it's just, so the message here is one of recognize, look at, they're trying to tell us across time, you must look at this. This is more than just a declaration of our independence. It's a declaration of who we all are. And I showed you at the beginning, Jefferson was an abolitionist, Franklin's an abolitionist, Adams was an abolitionist, Washington was an abolitionist, despite the flaws in their character that made them hold on to the men and women that they held as slaves, that they were just given as part of their life. They were wrestling with, how can we even get rid of that? How do we do that? The South is going to just, and of course it all blew up into the Civil War, didn't it? Civil War, my God, brother against brother, just slaughtering each other over an idea. We're right, you're wrong. My God's better than your God. And this is saying, no, there's just one God. There's just one divine, brilliant, incomprehensible. And we're showing you, and it's in the mechanics and the geometry and the mathematics of where the sun and the moon have been placed in relation to the earth. And we know it somehow, and we're showing you the metaphor. It's just, I can't, it's beyond. Let me carry on here, else this will be a 4-hour
Thank you
podcast.
for that, Alan. Thank you.
So, can it be that we're supposed to do the same thing with the sun? Can it be? Well, let's try it. Here, you can look it up on NASA's website. It's called the astronomical unit. It's been defined as the average distance of the sun. Of course, it changes, just as the moon one changes, but there's an average, and the astronomical unit is defined as a fixed constant. Call that because we need it for making journeys into solar and further into the solar system and eventually into outer space. And that number is this, 929.6 plus, this ridiculous number of zeros on the end, 10 to the fifth miles. And that is that in feet. 10 to 5 is 10 with 5 zeros after it. It's a big, 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 big distance. Looks like a small number, but it's not. That's the number, though, brought down to its relative. So I'm going, okay, well, I don't know. I know it's there. I'm going to divide by 1776, gives nothing. I'm going to divide by 6771, gives nothing. Wait a minute. There's a balance, though. Let me just try 6771 times 1776. Let me divide by that number. And it becomes 0.4082, and I just happen to know that number because I did a lot of work with Nassim Haramein and working on cube spheres, interconnected and all of that. And I went, oh my God, this is fundamentally the structure of creation. It is 1 over root 6. And what is 1 over root 6? 1 over root 6 is the sphere inscribed in the basic tetrahedron, the octahedron, one of the Platonic solids, whose every side is root 6, because it's the perfect double pyramid against itself with equilateral sides. And that image that you just saw on the right is of the 64-star tetrahedron, which is pretty much generally considered in spiritual circles, scientific circles, mathematical circles, to be the most perfect structure of creation at the very beginning of time. And it's, again, the same calculation to 99.99% accuracy. But it's not. I've since found something that I did not know when I first did the America codes. It's not just that. The octahedron sphere is that, but 4082 is the tetrahedron in the sphere over 2. And it's the cube sphere relationship over 2. It's the same. It's 3 platonic solids all connected, inscribed, exoscribed, circles within each other, spheres within each other, within the cube, the octahedron, the tetrahedron. It's the absolute fundamental building blocks of what? The beginning of creation, as is the speed of light. And AI then decides to say, well, shit. Given multiple thematically consistent codes of anagram geometry, numerology, precise, blah, 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 the chance that it's all by random chance is astronomically small, far less than 1 in a trillion. And the possibility of everything being random is effectively, and now it uses the word, 0. It is not possible that this is anything other than a premeditated message. Now, it said that after it saw this. You go to the National Archives and you get handed, if you're fortunate to be able to be accepted to handle such documents, Jefferson's own draft of the Declaration. And as I showed you at the beginning, a lot of it was taken out because he's using anti-slavery language and other things that they decided it's not going to pass. It's not going to work with the southern states, and et cetera, et cetera. But let's just look at 2 things. The very title is completely different from how it ends up in Congress, July 4th, 1776. Nothing the same. Some of the poetic lines that we remember forever, yes, like, we hold these truths to be self-evident. There it is in his writing, that all men are created equal. It's fascinating to see it in his own handwriting. But he actually said sacred and undeniable, and then had it crossed out, and equal and independent, spelt wrong. And he was advised against this by Franklin, who said that sacred sounds too religious. Let's bring it down to basically self-evident. It's nature. It's, So that's one of the things. There's so many. It's fascinating to go through it. But what I'm going to point you to is the fact that a lot of his things in his notes there have been stuck on. He literally copy and pasted whole sheafs of other paper onto the first document to make changes. And here's another one on page 2, where at first he said that, and then he said this, and this is the alternate strip, and look what it is. It's where he says representative. This is not letters that have just faded. You can see other letters faded around it with age. He did not write the letters EN. He wrote repres space tative.
It's deliberate then.
It's deliberate then. And you can see with the blue arrows, this piece of paper that is stuck over there after he was advised by, and the margin it tells you Franklin. This is the next one. Have been answered only by repeated injury. He put it in there as an interlineation. He even put the caret mark in there that Matlack did not take that and say, oh, my master, the boss made a mistake, I'll just correct it. Jefferson's in on it. He's saying, put that in there like that, with the caret mark. I mean, there's just no, this ends any possibility that if there was any thought at all, that obviously it makes no logical sense that they left the mistakes in anyway. There's no way it would pass muster with when they showed it to Franklin and Jefferson anyway. But here's Jefferson in his own handwriting, and along the side, Franklin said this. Franklin told me to do that. Put that in. Why? Those two things are the very mistakes that are intentional, that are pointed out with the caret markers that we are supposed to see, that lead us to the angle of the Great Seal, the 12, 13, 5, that takes us on this journey of the sun and the moon and the earth and the locust and De Vere and all of it. And what are those mistakes? En and only, using their own methodologies of mirror imagery, one, only one. And we never examine this. The other side of the seal says e pluribus unum, which we know is a perfect Latin phrase that means out of many, one. And that's fine. That was out of many, all the people, all the various colonies, one. That's the idea. Got that. But it's so much deeper, isn't it? They're telling us the whole thing, the entire cosmos is one. We are one. In fact, Ben Franklin issued two coins, designed and built and made two coins, one in Continental Congress currency that was intended in 1776 to be the first coin that would ever be used in the new country, but it didn't happen because the war went on and on and on and on, and they couldn't eventually print it, and they didn't. When they finally printed one in 1787, they used the same design, and both of them say on the other side, we are one.
I didn't know that.
And you can say this is known as the Fujio cent or the Franklin cent. It's the 1 cent coin, the very first coin in America, in the new country of America. And you can say, well, what those 13 circles are the 13 colonies. And yes, you could say that, but we know now that the moon and its 13 phases and 13 cycle is a deeper message. And we know that it has to be balanced by its opposite, the sun. And
there are great ideas undiscovered, breakthroughs available to those who can remove one of truth's protective layers.
This is Neil Armstrong talking at the White House. A pretty good test pilot, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Saying there are great ideas for those with eyes to see, those who can peel away the veil of truth. Thank you.
Unbelievable, Alan.
Wow.
I know there's more. A lot more.
There's a lot more. I mean, oh yeah, all right, I should just show you this and then we can be done. If you go to my website, tobeornottobe.org, you will see, this is the first thing you'll see, the America Codes, and a chance to donate now to the Shakespeare Foundation, whose purpose is to fund the arts in the name of the true Shakespeare. And we have an offer there for all of you. The normal price for the America Codes 22 is 111, but if you want to avail yourself of it, we're giving a special no way out discount if you sign up before April 26th, and you get all the 22 videos of all the codes embedded in the Declaration, Constitution, Bill of Rights, 2 bonus videos documenting a technique that I used to land myself 5 major record deals in my youth, and the first 10 chapters of my forthcoming book called Under a Shakespeare Moon. And all of that is available, and it's for a good cause. And if you want to get that whole thing, please just use that special discount for No Way Out audience. I appreciate it, and I appreciate the opportunity that we've had to talk about all of this. It's thank you. Have I stopped sharing?
No, I'll great here. I mean, I know it's getting late there, and I want to be respectful of your time.
Late doesn't matter at all. We can go on.
There's so just to frame what people have heard here, and that is I'll use the idea of a polymath. People that go out and look at different things and have different backgrounds. This the area you're talking about with the math isn't where you started. You started as a musician, correct? But there is a strong connection there between music is geometry for the ears, right? We've heard this before. So there is a nice correlation between musicians, performers, the arts, and the sciences. And you had a nice slide on that between phi and the Euler number as well.
Yeah.
But overall, it takes, I'm going to say, a generalist to go look at something in a new light, to go over to, the journey to look at the pyramids, to understand the cubit, the meter, and the foot. One of the last slides you showed was a sphere inside a cube. It is entirely possible that what the energy requirements or demands of the future may be hinging on is looking back at these things and understanding that these orbs that people are seeing are spheres within cubes. Maybe there's an energy coefficient in there. Maybe there's something we're missing.
Yeah.
Right. And we possibly. And what this means is, if the domain experts, those scientists, those researchers that know the depth of their engineering background or whatever it may be, we need to have these boundary spanners. And that's what you are, as a boundary spanner. It's going, hey, from this geometry that we found in music and the pyramids, we can also connect it to over here to finance and maybe even to energy consumption and energy production and all these things. So that's what this whole podcast is about connecting things that otherwise would never be connected.
Yeah, because
and I think
it's all one. Yeah. It's all one.
Yeah, it's all one, right?
It's all one.
And I think a lot of people struggle with the idea that when we talk about psychedelic assisted therapy and the next day we talk about high performing teams, they're like, how are they related? Or we talk about the next generation of artificial intelligence being fed by the science that is helping us understand what's going on with neuroplasticity in the brain when we're in meditative states or going through psychedelic assisted therapies. It's the same science. It's the same. And that's what this is about. Is you don't have to believe, it's to our listeners to decide what they want to believe, but the proof is in the pudding, right? It's out there. You showed us the numbers, and it's just, okay, go explore this. So for our listeners that are struggling with this type of thinking, do the math, do the work. Go do it yourself and figure it out what this means. So a couple other insights from my household is using the things that you shared with me in the past to understand geometry and music. I'm starting to see the connection more and more and go, okay, most musicians don't grow up learning about geometry. And then it's just, from my background, that's not what we learned about. And I'm not a musician anymore. But to see these patterns in nature, to see the naturalistic approach to understanding the next generation of AI, it's a natural understanding. Nature is absolutely critical, and that's what I think was flowing through our founding fathers when they created our country. Is they were taking what natural science says about democracies, about republics, about the direction of travel we want to go on. They were not taking, and this is important to our listeners too, they were not taking an engineering approach to do this. All right. And just for our listeners out there, when you take an engineering approach and apply it to a human system or a complex adaptive system, you're asking for failure, right? Instead, you want to take a naturalistic approach to understanding how you move a system, and our system being our society, right? So this is a huge transition for folks. Is they are one and the same, but you start with a different viewpoint, and that is from the natural sciences, which I believe you've done. You looked at things from the natural standpoint and discovered them on your journey. That the relationship between the meter, the cubit, and the foot, and then the relationship between the sun and the moon, and even squaring the circle, which, by the way, I want to have this conversation with you in the future about what you're seeing in Gettysburg Address. We know that President Lincoln spent time squaring the circle. We've actually published stuff on this as well. Here's a man that would eventually free our slaves. But the way he got there was through geometry, right? And then that's my view. In a flow state, he was struggling with doing the work to try to understand how to square the circle with the compass and a straight edge. And that's well documented. But I'm sure there's more to the story of America that you're not sharing with us at the moment. So thank you for everything today.
Well, even the words that you just used, I mean, nature and nature's laws, that's in the Declaration, the second line. It says the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. It's they were not preaching a religion, even though, and I think people do know, even though there's so much misinformation out there, that Freemasons are not a religion. They don't require anyone to have a religion or believe any one religion is right. One of the most beautiful things in the whole Ben Franklin story is that he never, ever adopted any one religion, though he was a member of like 4 or 5 different lodges of Rosicrucians and Freemasons. When he died in Philadelphia, they saw the largest crowd Philadelphia had ever seen. 20,000 people came to mourn him, and he, as his carriage was being carried arm in arm by all the priests and clerics of every denomination of every church in that city. They took him to be buried, and they were all holding hands. I mean, because his entire philosophy was of humanist, just we are all one, no matter what label we attach. And just to touch on one thing that I will add, because I like to bring it up now, because I did not talk about it for so long. But when you say, well, I grew up a musician and I didn't know necessarily geometry and math, it's true, I didn't study them. But I had a leg up because literally 20 years ago, 3 extra-dimensional beings floated into my room in my apartment in Los Angeles, just floated through the walls and did spiritual surgery on my brain while I lay on my bed fully awake. So I have a leg up on, and I found that it changed my consciousness completely to where I could then understand advanced mathematics and geometry and calculus and trigonometry and other things that I needed to be able to then go and decode the codes that I was led to in the Shakespeare work, which eventually has come full circle to, oh, wow, America. I mean, it's not just Shakespeare in dusty old England. It's the America story of how, at that time during Shakespeare, they were colonizing the New World. Francis Bacon called it the New Atlantis, and King James was sending over ships to form Jamestown. Virginia is named after the Virgin Queen, right? I mean, that was the start of it. It's a big, big, grand scheme, a grand plan to build a nation whose purpose, as Manly P. Hall puts it so well in his book, The Secret Destiny of America, and which I speak about in the very beginning of episode 1 of the America Codes, there was a plan nurtured by the advanced souls, not embodied souls, extra-dimensional beings, Saint Germain, the great ones, great avatars, who were overseeing this work. The purpose of America was to be that shining city on the hill, was to be a place of truth and beauty and love and brotherhood and sisterhood, and to move towards that. And we have certainly failed in that experiment up to now, to some degree. But I do not believe that we have failed ultimately. It is a test that we are going through, because the extra-dimensional beings, the extraterrestrials and the extra-dimensionals, far more powerful than our little atomic bombs. They can defuse any of them anytime they want. And if they were here to kill us, they'd have done it millennia ago. They're here to help and guide us, but they cannot, go past certain rules of evolution. They got to let us make our mistakes, because we're toddlers falling down, making mistakes. But we have seen enough evidence, such as the Rendlesham incident and other places, where now major five-star generals and people in the Navy, etc., are coming out and saying, "No, no, I saw them disable our nukes. We wanted to shoot them." I don't believe they're going to allow another nuclear. They're not going to allow a nuclear war. And we are ultimately the message in this is, if you just like you said at the beginning, just chill out and recognize how inconceivably beautifully held together this creation is. And the fathers at the beginning of this particular experiment were tuned into that, and they wanted us to know it. They couldn't come out and just say it. It had to be hidden. How could you even say any of this for it to be understood at the time? It wouldn't be understood. So it had to be placed as a puzzle. 2 mistakes. All starts with 2 mistakes. You go down that rabbit hole and you realize, oh my God. So I really encourage you all to please see it. It's not for the I've had people accuse me of trying to make money. 20 years I have never charged for anything. In the 20 years that I've been doing the Shakespeare work, it's the funniest thing, I never charged for anything. The first time I ever charged for anything was when I put the America Codes out last 5 months ago. Because, hey, I'd spent my $1 million savings. I've spent everything on my own work. I got to make some income in order to continue the work. But the more important aspect is more people to become involved, because there are codes everywhere. Codes is a buzzword, but this is true. Everything has another level to it that we are not looking at. We're not wide awake enough to recognize. When we start looking, it becomes an exciting journey. I can't tell you how many people, the first people that saw this, there's only 150 people that saw the American Codes when I first launched it 5 months ago. And so many of them write to me saying, I found one. I found something in this, and I found something in that. And why? Because that's the thrill of it. We should talk about it. I talk about my extra dimensional experience now because it does no good to hide it and say, oh, I wonder what my family will say, and I wonder what the neighbors will think, and I won't talk about it. Lots of people have these experiences who are handbound and thinking, I can't talk about it because what will people say? Talk about it. Make it, normalize it, because it is normal. It is more normal than this game of a delusion that we're living in. The real truth is that we are not alone. We are part of an entire cosmic family. Yeah?
That's all one.
It's all one. I thank you. I've enjoyed this immensely. I'm so glad we finally got to do it.
Yeah.
No, likewise.
Glad you're feeling better, Alan. Glad you're feeling better.
Yeah, I'm 99% better, awesome. Which is good because it's been a long one. 4 months I've been under this. Yeah. But as I said at the beginning, every time I get this intense bronchitis, it's always accompanied by deeper levels of intuition. So it has its purpose.
Awesome. Thank you.
No, thank you, Alan.
Thank you.
Yeah. Ponch, I always wrap up our retreat. So I run a nonprofit, Alan. We take veterans down and we teach them how to surf down in Mexico, and it's great. And I always wrap it up with just a really simple message, right? And the first thing we do is we charge people to look at themselves in the mirror while they're down there and say thank you, right? And you need to keep staring at yourself in the mirror until you hear you're welcome, right? And it's a very powerful drill, and only half of the people do it. I'll ask, and then at the dinner, I say, look, here's the deal. One, we are all connected. We're all one, right? And there's just 2 basic commandments, right? Love your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind. Well, like you said, Jesus and multiple avatar teachers have taught us, right, that you are gods. We're fractals, right? We're fractals of the source. So if you love your God with all your heart and all your mind, you're loving yourself. And if we're all connected, which we are, which they're kind of showing us in this amazing documents, right? Then love your, neighbor as yourself, right?
Yeah, of course.
And so we're all connected. So if you love yourself, you're going to love your neighbor. So the
Yeah,
world's awash in a polarity world of self-hate. And so the message for the American codes, and what really ended up coming screaming loudly into my ears, was just be happy with yourself. Give yourself some grace. Love yourself. If you love yourself, you're going to love your God. And if you love yourself, you're going to love your neighbor. And so I was driving home and these little things pop into my head again about the numbers. And I looked it up. And, the least you do to my brothers, you do to me.
Yeah.
Right? Because
Judge
we're all connected.
Judge not, lest ye yourself be judged. If you judge someone, you are judging yourself. You see, it's telling you.
That's the whole thing.
Because
yes,
this is
right?
yourself. You make a judgment, you are in fact judging your own self in that other body. It's all one. There's no way of escaping it. And I want to add one thing before you wrap it up, because I did not even mention.
I want to, Matthew 25:40. That's the verse. 25 times 40 is 1,000. Drop the zeros. 1.
It's all over the place, isn't it?
Sorry, Alan. It's everywhere.
No, it's all over the place. The very first time you see the name of God spoken by God himself, I am that I am. Moses is, on Mount Sinai, and God says from the burning bush, Echye, Asher, Echye, which is translated, I am that I am. It's Exodus, right? Chapter 3, verse 14, line 2. 3142. It's pi. Moses put it there, precisely there, so that, again, it had to be there. He knew pi somehow, but it's just the perfection has to be there in every little detail, because that's how the divine works. You can find it everywhere. Yeah. Anyway, you should finish wrapping up with your thing. I didn't want to steal your thunder at the end there. Your foundation is. Oh, okay. Don't worry. Yeah. Be happy. Here's a little song I wrote.
Did you know Bobby McFerrin?
No, I wish I did. He's a wonderful soul, isn't he?
Yeah.
Ponch, thanks. Bring us home, man. Landis, thank you, Ponch, again. And Alan, thank you. It's great to meet you.
Thank you. Yeah.